Rand McNally miles. I drove 2,686.5 miles this week. Rand McNally says I drove 2,556. So that is a difference of 130.5 miles that I was shortchanged. I have a big update that's coming at the end of this video, but let's go ahead and start off where we left off last time. One thing I failed to mention because I was so brain dead at the end of the last video is that there was a lot of trains jammed up in the rail yard when I got there. There was one that was basically, there was a train that was blocking TTR twice. And you could go all the way around, but you were only going to be able to come in because the trains were coming in like this from two sides. Or if they weren't, they were blocking them up as if they were. So that really messed up things for quite a while. And so when I got in there and had a chance to basically stay on the side that was without crossing over any railroad tracks, I was not the least bit interested in waiting to see if I could get any other loads or anything like that. I went ahead and just did what I needed to do and got right out of there. I had had 2 really bad nights of sleep in a row, and I was exhausted, and I was not interested in playing truck anymore. I just wanted to go home. Anyway, there was a bad storm coming into Atlanta. Actually, it was coming in from Tennessee. So I listened to the Ryan Hall Y'all YouTube channel giving me a live update on the weather. And then when he stopped his 12-hour live stream, I started listening to Max Velocity weather. And he kind of picked up where it went off. Now, I was actually anticipating, because I was seeing a lot of lightning strikes going on in Atlanta, I was anticipating running into a little bit of rain, but I was hoping to get out of town because I was pre-assigned when I woke up on Saturday morning with the Dollar General. Well, first of all, pick up at New Cold again in McDonough, and then go to Dollar General in Jonesville, South Carolina, just like last week. But because of the storms and stuff going on, I knew that if I could get out of Atlanta, I would have a chance of not being rained on, because the rain was actually slowly pushing, from the west towards Atlanta, but it was kind of going north into Tennessee. And South Carolina is like northeast, east-northeast at that. So I knew that if I woke up, I slept in my bed again because I've really been missing it. Not been sleeping well in the truck here at all. So I went ahead and slept in my bed. I got up at 8, got to the truck before 9:30, and as opposed to sitting around and waiting until 10, I said, you know what? If I have a fighting chance of getting out of Atlanta and beating the traffic, I'm going to do that. Well, not traffic, but the weather, I'm going to do that. So I went ahead and started my clock a little bit early, like 15 minutes early, and went ahead and pre-tripped and then got down to New Cold in McDonough. They were ready for me this time. I should also mention that I had to do what? I had to grab an empty. So I guess I should start there, because I went to Electrolux like I did, like I got lucky the previous week, but their power was out. So I wasn't able to pick up an empty there. I even asked, because the one of the gates was up. I said, hey, can I go ahead and grab an empty? He's like, there's no power. I'm like, well, the gate's up. He says, no, but I can't see if there's any, if we have any available to you. I'm like, okay, fine. So I went to Kimberly Clark, got lucky. Kimberly Clark actually had one for me, and that was fine. The one thing I will say about this whole process that really annoyed me is that as soon as I pulled out of the yard after my pre-trip and I started this whole night, I figured this was going to be just setting the trend for the entire night. As soon as I pulled out and made my right turn, I was approaching the stop sign, getting ready to go over the railroad tracks when ding, 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 ding. And so you're not going to race a train. You don't do that. But I ended up going the other way as opposed to going over the railroad tracks, which is technically, there's a sign that comes up and says no vehicles with 3 or more axles this direction beyond this point. But if you go like 100 yards past that, there is a dirt road turnoff that also has a sign on it. But as soon as you get to the other side of that dirt road, you're into the truck lane. You're on the truck route. So Never have I ever seen a police officer down there, even though I was told that they sometimes stake out down there. I went ahead and risked it because I was so frustrated. And I went down to Electrolux. Power was out. Went to Kimberly Clark. They did have an empty, so I grabbed that one and went to New Cold and picked up. And I got out of Atlanta. This is part of the reason why, because of the storms coming in. That's one of the reasons I didn't want to sit there, and because of the storm. So I was able to make it to, I was able to get to I was able to get all the way up to the Dollar General. But one note I do have here at the, picking up the container at the Kimberly Clark is the red. This is the second time in a week that this has happened. And it was basically the, red airline was very loose. So I used my hammer and just kind of popped it a little bit, just, gently, just tap it, and then try it. It was still loose. So I tapped it a little bit more and it tightened up enough. So that way it would make a good connection. And I went by the office, tried to tell them that I was picking up a certain container and they were not in. So I told the security, and then tried to use the OBC to call it into my office so that way they would actually dispatch the load. They didn't until I got to New Cold, which was really, really annoying. Anyway, it was about 10 minutes after someone answered the phone in the office that they finally dispatched me. And I asked for a pre-assignment at that point because I had asked for one earlier in the day, knowing full and well the planners don't normally come in until like almost sun up. And I was told by the one guy that's got like 30 plus years at JB Hunt that works overnight, he's like, can't help you. Planner comes in at like 6:30. He didn't say can't help you, but he's like, well, the planner will come in at 6:30 and assign you something. I'm like, look, I'm going to be getting there really early. I'll get there probably like 1:30, 2:30, something like that. He's like, well, don't worry. We'll have a planner that comes in at 6:30 and we'll take care of you. That is annoying to me. I'm so frustrated with people telling me, yeah, don't worry, we'll take care of you, because they're on the clock. I'm not. Drivers are. We're the one aspect of this entire process where we're the ones that are taken advantage of. We're at the mercy of weather delays, traffic delays, construction delays. Anybody who's at one of the shipping yards or any one of the customers that just decides to be slow, they're paid. We're not. So to me, that's highly annoying. So I was like, can you give me something? He's like, well, they'll get you at 6:30 when a planner comes in. I was so annoyed. Anyway. So, when I got there, it was actually because of all the frustrating finding an empty and all that kind of stuff. I was mistaken. Got my numbers wrong. It was actually just before 4 a.m. when I got there. And I know full and well that a change of staff comes in at 4. So when I called from New Cold, they wouldn't assign me something. But I started calling nonstop, luckily got a hold of somebody and told them I've been trying for hours to get a pre-assignment even before the planners left. Because the planners leave at like 9 or 10. And I was trying to get the guy that refers to me as the guy that hit the deer. But it ended up being another guy over there. So, he calls me the deer destroyer now because I coined that phrase. But it took me like almost 30 minutes to get him on the phone. And then I told the guy I've been trying to get something. He said, all right, let me see. He said, I tell you what, there's nothing in your area. We're light on loads. And I'm like, and so what I said, should I in-gate this into one of the yards? He's like, you could do that, I guess. And I said, where do you want me to take it? He said, how about, well, you tell me, Fairburn, Ostell, or you can take it to Palmetto. I said, let me just take it to Palmetto. He says, okay, you're routed. And I set my DRT. And as I was approaching Atlanta, I get a pre-assignment. I pull over, look at it, and it ends up being back in Anderson. First tissue in Anderson. So I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn around and go back and grab it. I did. And it was an easy drop and hook. Still didn't have a pre-assignment when I got down to Palmetto. So I went ahead and shut down. I was starting to run low on my hours when I got to Palmetto. And knowing full and well I was still carrying a container, I figured I would go ahead and set my DRT with the container connected up to the truck. So I went ahead and parked in Palmetto with the container and the chassis and stuff like that connected up. And I wasn't going to go ahead and drop in Fairburn because I don't like dropping off, leaving, and then coming back first thing the next day, especially since the appointment time was technically not, I was going to miss the train if I went ahead and held on to the container a few more hours. So anyway, my Tuesday, I woke up and was pre-assigned Walmart DC in Midway, Tennessee. And it was out of Fairburn. So I got up and I was out by 9 p.m. And of course, just like the previous day, I turn right as soon as I leave the terminal. Ding, 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 ding. Same thing. It's like it waits until the train can see me. And then it suddenly says, all right, quick, hit it and let's go. So 2 days in a row, it waited until I got through the gate and got to that stop sign at the end of JB Hunt and was making that right turn before the lights come on. So anyway, 2 days in a row. This time, I don't know about the last time, but this time it took about 20 or so minutes before the train actually cleared. So I got to Fairburn, and those white pickup trucks that they have that are like CSX workers, they were blocking they were blocking the rail from me getting in there because I guess a train was coming in. So I went ahead and drove past it, drove all the way to the far side of the yard, and then cut in to go to the TTR because that's where it wanted me to drop off my container. So by the time I got over to the TTR the other direction, the white truck was gone. I have no idea why it was there. There was no train that went by. But anyway, so I dropped off my container, and then looking at my pre-assignment and going to pick up chassis. I hate that. So anyway, I picked up the chassis. This time it was actually in the lot it was supposed to be in. And I was so frustrated at this point. I tell you, I was like, I'm going to so leave JB Hunt just because, and you know what? I'll get to it at the end of this video. I'll fill you in on what's going on with my thought process and stuff like that. But I was so irritated with the trains and all the delays and stuff like that and the lack of freight. And they're slow to, oh, well, don't worry, we'll pre-assign you something. And when the planner comes in 4 hours and all that kind of garbage. I was so frustrated. I was like, you know what? I'm definitely leaving JB Hunt. I called CSX and was told I was 6 in queue. Anyway, that would put me right in Atlanta during rush hour if I go out and come back. So anyway, I tell you, the ELDs really suck. You may say, what does that have to do with anything? If you didn't have an ELD, if you're wired and ready to go, you could just keep on going. If you wanted to sleep a little bit more before you left, you wouldn't be told by your company it's time to get up and go. That really doesn't affect me because normally I have to sit around. I have problems sleeping sometimes because I'll be perfectly well rested. And I'm like, okay, I have to wait 2 hours before I can leave. So I'll sit around and wait and not do anything. And then all of a sudden I'll be tired because it's time for me to leave and I'm now tired. So that's annoying for me. ELDs totally suck. That's one of those examples of it. Anyway, it was about 45 minutes before the container finally showed up and then I was out of there. I arrived to Midway around 3:30 a.m. And after dropping off my container, my loaded trailer container, the truck jumped out of yard move. Again, even though I had not ever exceeded 8 miles an hour. And that was really, really making me mad because I had driven all through the yard. I had gotten and picked up my empty and then I was starting to head back when all of a sudden it decided to jump out of yard move. And at that point, I was already 23 minutes into my 30-minute break. So I went ahead and stopped right there and said, I'm just going to sit here for 30 minutes. Or actually, and originally I said I was going to do that, and after 30 minutes I was going to move. But then after a while I said, you know what? I'm just going to creep at 2 miles an hour through this stupid parking lot. And I got up to the gate. So basically I spent almost an hour in this stupid yard, even though I only needed to be there about a half an hour. Because the stupid truck jumps out of yard move. It's really, really irritating. Anyway, I was headed back towards Atlanta, and this is something that surprised me here. Going I-81 southbound at like 4 a.m. Way station was open. That's pretty rare. And then as soon as you get on 40 and you start going, that way station was open. Okay. Good to know. It's rare to see one that's open that late. I know there's some, but the ones in Georgia aren't. They normally work on more office hours. So anyway, I was pre-assigned to in-gate my empty to Austell, so I went ahead and did this. Again, they're collecting up empties to send to some other part of the country. And I was pre-assigned Venture Logistics in Albany, Georgia, and I arrived at about 8:45 a.m. And because of the pre-assignment in Albany, I tell you, I went to pick up my container, and the back left lock was not budging. So, and it was sitting properly in the chassis. It's just, I guess it was just shifted a little bit, and it wasn't able to, even though it looked like it was settled properly in there. The rest of them were smooth and stuff. So I grabbed my hammer and just, convinced it to get in there. I should call my hammer the convincer. Anyway, so I got out of there. Didn't actually run into very much rush hour traffic, and I shut down for the day at Pilot in Jackson, which is the one that I prefer, which is when you're going southbound, you go to the left, which is east. The east Pilot, I think, as opposed to the west Flying J. Flying J is crazy. Anyway, I arrived 11 minutes before my clock was going to violate, and GeoTab was erroring. It threw a message and told me while I was I was probably 10 minutes away from my exit, and it says, "You're not connected. GeoTab is not connected." And I was like, what? So anyway, when I pulled up and realized that GeoTab was erroring, I closed GeoTab. I basically just, hit the thing and swiped up, gave it a moment, launched GeoTab again. It wasn't logging in. So I was like, crap, I got less than 11 minutes before I'm going to violate my clock. So I quickly try to log in on my phone. It's not logging in either. I quickly call the office. I say, hey, what's going on with GeoTab? And they say, you're the second driver to call about that. Here's the GeoTab number to call them directly. I called GeoTab, and they say, yeah, we're having issues. And I'm like, I'm going to violate my clock in like 4 minutes unless we can get this squared away. And they said, yeah, we can't get into the system, sorry. But, we could square it up after the system comes back up. I'm like, okay. In the meantime, I call back the office and I tell them I'm going to violate my clock because of the stupid GeoTab error. And they said, okay, well, you're letting us know. We'll make sure that you're taken care of. And I was like, all right, thank you. Anyway, I go back there. I do some stuff for like an hour, and then I come back over, and it finally registered my on-duty status. But it had been sitting there for like an hour and some odd minutes. So as long as you don't drive, you're not going to violate your clock. It only is a violation if you drive after your clock has your 11-hour drive clock or your 14-hour total has expired. So at this point, I call up the GeoTab number. They say, okay, we'll walk you through how to fix it. They show me how to do it on the tablet, basically how to add it. But because it jumped me into on duty, it seemed to have a memory of when I first hit the on duty, and it went ahead and went there. So luckily it never showed me as once the GeoTab system came back up, it never showed me as violating, which was awesome. And so that got squared away. I went ahead and edited my hours so that way I was shutting down, and basically starting up again on my Wednesday at 9:00 p.m. Actually, I take that back. It was just before that. After my pre-trip, I was leaving just after 9. And I got to Venture right at about 11:30. Had to call the office on the way because I still had no pre-assignment. Moments later, I was told to in-gate to Austell. All these in-gates. It was when I dropped off that I realized, when I dropped off that container, that I realized that the weight that I thought that I was carrying was actually written in kilograms, not in pounds. So I thought I was carrying 28,000 or something like that. It ended up being 44,500, something like that, which means I would have had maybe 2 little spots that I could have slid into to make sure that the container would have been legal if the weigh station was open. I didn't realize this because I misread kilograms for pounds, because on the printed paper it says pounds, but on their typing that comes up over it and it lists all the information and stuff, it was very faded, and it said the weight, And then it said in parentheses kg, which because it was under pounds, I totally missed. Luckily, I was not caught by a weigh station. That would have been bad. Anyway, pre-assigned Amazon in Louisville, Tennessee. Dropped off and picked up at Austell before 4 a.m. and I was out of there. So anyway, arrived at Amazon just before 8 a.m. and was told to shut down after the drop. Shut down at the nearest pilot. So basically, I've been given a lot of loads this week that were just go out and then in-gate back in. So there's no reverse back from one of the customers to take a load back to the rail. I was pre-assigned Colgate in Morristown, Tennessee. So I got up and I was out by around 7 p.m. because when they told me to shut down early, it starts to back up my clock. I arrived just over an hour later as the guard was clearing me to enter. A man from the office came out and told me that he was going to smoke and go ahead and pull in and wait for him. But I asked if I could go ahead and drop off the container and then pick up my other one because I knew the pre-assigned number. He said, yeah, go ahead and I'll meet you in the office. And I beat him. I don't know what he was doing, but he was smoking for a long time. And so still it took like 20 minutes for him to finally come in back to the office after I got there. So he finally came back in. He gave me the paperwork. It was basically 42.5 thousand pounds of toothpaste. It was a Colgate / Palmolive. And I needed a scale, so I did so at the pilot that was on my way a few miles down the road, and it was fine. It was going to California, so I had to scale on the frontmost hole. And what is it, the 8th hole or whatever else, and it scaled just fine. So I hit the road. And interestingly enough, the weigh stations in Tennessee were open again. Even though it was like 11 p.m., something like that when I was going through there, a little bit before 11 and then right after 11. And so, I mean, I got to Fairburn just after 1:30. Jeez, nose. And there was a train shuffling around, going forward, backward, blocking the TTR. So I decided not to drive around and was just going to come in from that way. And it was not, okay. It was technically not blocking the TTR. I knew it was where it was going to end up blocking the TTR because it was a very long train, but it actually blocked my path going into the rail yard. So as you're approaching, if you pull off of like the Fairburn Road exit and you start to enter there, the gate comes down, and I decided I was going to wait there as opposed to pulling off and going around the other side and trying to come in from the other way. That was a mistake. And it's a mistake I will not make again because it took almost an hour for that stupid train to clear because it was so long. And I actually thought it was coming out. It ended up that it was going in. So by the time I finally got in there, it was blocking the way to the TTR a little bit. I'm sure I could have gone all the way down. But anyway, I had to do a 30-minute break anyway. So I did it while sitting there waiting. And I made sure that I jumped into yard move on my approach so that way I was constantly in yard move the entire time. So hopefully that if I was going to be waiting there for over an hour, I could just call it all, as one big block, and it would never ever see me hit the drive line. And that way I could just put in for my rail delay because it was all rail delay. But anyway, I got inside, I did my my drop, and I was pre-assigned Carter's in Brazelton, which is really weird, a weird load for me. And normally they send me out on long runs, come back, long run, come back, long run, come back until my Friday. And then they send me to like to Brazelton or someplace shorter. And this time I was a little bit disappointed that it wasn't farther, but I went ahead and did it since I had hours remaining, and I knew that they were starting to run low on loads. I dropped off the container and picked up another container without any drama on the way to Carter's. The office told me to in-gate my empty into Fairburn. So again, no second drop fee. Loads were soft. So I dropped off in Fairburn and shut down in Palmetto. And tomorrow, the next day, I was going to leave I had my DRT set for 4:35 p.m. because my schedule had already backed up so far. And, but there was already at that point over 12 hours worth of load shortages. So many drivers were not working and hanging out in the office. And I went in about an hour, maybe 30 minutes early, and was talking to my manager. And just chit-chatted with him, hung out with him, and stuff like that. And he ended up leaving for the day at about 5. And about an hour after my DRT, I was I was offered right before my manager left a 25-minute run across, taking a container from one place to another place. And it was a flat rate fee of $25. I'm like, no. And they said, why don't you want to do that? I said, because if I come on the clock to do that, I'm going to miss another load. And if I don't, then I'll be sitting around waiting for another load after that because I have to get in line. And I'll be waiting for quite a while to get another load. And in the meantime, my clock is going to be ticking. If it takes a couple of hours because loads are soft, I might have to sacrifice a good load that goes far out and then back in. So they were like, oh, okay, it makes sense. So they ended up giving it to a local guy instead. About half an hour after my manager left, I was offered to pick up a repaired container in Valdosta. So it's about almost 150 miles away. This was a 500-mile round trip, and it would have me finish around 2 a.m., which I was very, very happy about. I picked up, and it was a simple one-button arrival because you didn't have to grab an empty. You basically just pulled up their bobtail, you backed in there, and you clicked picked up container, and then you leave. And so obviously you had to enter it in the tablet to show that you were carrying that particular container and chassis. But aside from that, it was done. I was out of there, and I got back to Fairburn, dropped off easily, and it was an easy Friday, even if it wasn't that profitable. Now, I'm going to fill you in on some updates. The last time I recorded an episode, it was right at the end of my Friday. I think I recorded before I went home. That night, I went home, took a little bit of a nap, but not really a whole lot because I had a lot of stuff going on. I actually slept back there. Just took like an hour-long nap, and that's all I was able to get before I had to start my day. And throughout the day, I started thinking that maybe part of my frustrations with JB Hunt were legit, but part of it might also be because I have a personal situation that technically has been a challenge for me to be over the road all week. So basically, if I work 70 hours or up to 70 hours in the truck, and then I shut down for 10 hours, and I do that 4 nights in a row, then basically that's 110 hours up to. And that's 110 of 168 hours in a week. So that only gives me like 58 hours to be off. And to reverse your sleep schedule to get back with your family, then reverse your sleep schedule to get back on night mode, that cuts in on that time, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of family time, or you're just exhausted all day long. So basically what I determined was it doesn't give me much time to be with my family and to accomplish everything I need to. I really need to be home daily again. So I made that determination and decided that Thursday I was going to call the manager at Martin again. Spoke to her, asked her if they would take me back. I think I may have mentioned this before, but she was more than happy to take me back when I talked to her before. So I went ahead and started to onboard with a recruiter. The recruiter that I had worked with before was no longer in a recruiter. He was like in adjustments now. So I basically filled out all the forms again and sent like auto fill on most of it. And the recruiter got to me and said, all right, your medical card has less than 4 months remaining, so you're going to have to get another test done or whatever. So I said, okay, let's line it up for this upcoming Friday. So not the next day, but the following week, because I spoke to her on Friday and I said, can you line me up? And she said, sure. So I went ahead and when I was talking to the manager from Martin, I had told her that I was probably going to have to take an extended time period off that would not be covered by FMLA because it wouldn't probably be restricted to 6 weeks. And should I go ahead and stay at JB Hunt until after that and then apply for Martin? She said, no, you're telling me now. So if you, I'll take you back whenever I can get you. If you want to come on over now, I will go ahead and approve you to be off for your extended time off if you need it and when you need it. If you want to come on aboard. I'm like, okay. So I went ahead and said, okay. And, decided I would put in a 2-week notice at JB Hunt. On Monday, actual Monday, my Tuesday, this last week that I just covered, at the end of the day, I called and tried to speak to my manager, but he was out. And so I called and talked to the big manager, and the one that I had sent my resume to and applied for, trying to see if I could join the overnight team to try to straighten up some of the craziness that's going on there, some of the frustration I've been having. I was going to try to straighten up some of that, having that experience, being part of the fleet team, fleet manager team or whatever. It would have helped me, being a driver, to understand their situation and to help me help drivers. But I didn't want to necessarily put in a resignation with him, so I asked him if I were to put in a resignation, how does JB Hunt like to have those? Do you like to have it like, would you let me work out an entire resignation, or would you tell me, finish up your week and then you're gone? Or go ahead and when you're done tonight, take it back to Palmetto and you're done. He said, we'll work with you. However, you are rehire eligible. So if you need to leave abruptly, if you need to leave and put in a notice or whatever, we'll work with you based on your needs. I'm like, all right, that's very nice. Thank you. So I let him go. Later on that day, this is on Monday, I heard back from Martin. Everything is clear. My background check, my job history, my clearinghouse, all that stuff is good. Every bit of it. So they said, tell us when you want to start. I said, what are the options? They said either Monday, Tuesday, and then you do the Walmart specific training on Wednesday, or start Wednesday with the Walmart specific, and then do Thursday, Friday on the general. I said, let me put in a notice. Let me work the rest of this week, and then I'll work out the following week. And I also asked about insurance. How long will it take for insurance to kick in gear? And they said, whatever month you start, it doesn't start the next month, it starts the month after, on the 1st. So basically, I could start on the 31st, on a Monday, the 31st, and I would not be eligible for insurance the entire next 30 days, but then it would go into effect right after that. So I said, okay, let's do that. The following day, my manager came in, and I called him and said, I would like to put in a resignation. I talked to the big manager, and he told me that I could work out a resignation just fine. I asked how long the JB Hunt insurance would actually be active, or does it end the second that I leave? He didn't know. He's going to have to find out from me, but he hasn't gotten back to me yet. I may end up calling the people group or something like that this week and asking them. But when I went into the office on my Friday, his Thursday, we did talk, and I understand some of the frustration. When I first started, I had that different manager that I liked a whole lot, and it was mainly because he gave me his cell number, and if I had any questions, he was happy to answer them. He's the only person that does that. And then when I went aboard with the other manager, he was having some health issues at the time, so he wasn't as active in responding to my emails, and he wasn't in the office to answer my phone calls. So I was irritated from the very beginning because I couldn't get him on the phone. By the time he came in and kept playing catch up, that was when I started having the issues with the camera saying I was distracted because I was driving down the road and glancing down at my phone a couple of times to get it and unlock it in my phone in my hand, and that's when it was saying distracted and it was recording videos. And then after I had that talk with the manager I like and my manager, who I wasn't that happy with at the time because I wasn't feeling supported, and they were just like, I could understand his frustration with me because he'd just come back after having some health issues, and here I am instantly having some issues with looking at my phone. So I imagine his frustration too. I had frustrations, he had frustrations. We didn't really jive very well at the very beginning. He was still professional. We butt heads a little bit. But after I understood that he had some health issues, after he understood that I would be more than happy just to put down the phone and not deal with it at all, I was trying to be, multitask, And since I was creeping along, I was like, okay, well, I'm in a 5-lane wide, entrance way or whatever, and I'm in the middle. It's the middle of the night. No one's there. I'm creeping along at 3 miles an hour. I should be able to grab my phone or whatever. Company didn't want you doing that. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I'll just pull up there and I will do everything I need to. It's not been an issue ever since. I was trying to multitask because I thought that I should, multitask to be a little faster. Don't do it. You don't need to. Just pull up there, then grab your phone. It's also legal that way. So, hasn't been an issue ever since that meeting when they showed me a couple of videos and was like, you can't look at your phone. If this continues to happen, this will be ground for termination. I'm like, okay. And they said it may be grounds for termination when you know that it would be since you signed the form. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I don't have to look at my phone. And I haven't had to the remaining like 5 months or whatever, 4 and change. Haven't. It's not been an issue. So, I did talk to my manager on my Friday while waiting for the load, which this is before I was sitting down to pick up the repaired trailer. And since we now have an understanding, I told him basically, a little bit about my personal situation and my reason for needing to leave. I didn't get really deep into it or anything like that because nor did I really discuss my frustrations with JB Hunt because he would be powerless to do anything about it. Now, I do receive, like every month or something like that, one of those emails that comes out of evaluate JB Hunt anonymously and let us know. And I will fill that thing out and I will be brutally honest. But do I need to with my manager? No. He's not going to be able to do anything. But anyway, he did tell me that he will miss, he says, I'll miss you. He says, what you don't realize is that because I basically drive overnight, I start early enough and I'm like the earliest person on his team that actually starts. So I am already doing, by the time he comes in on Monday, I'm done with most of 2 days. And so what he basically does is he uses my hours because I hustle as an example to the rest of to any of the team members that come up and talk to him. And he told me this. And he says he has one guy that just doesn't ever want to leave the truck. He works like 30 hours a week. I'm like, why do you still have this guy employed? He says, I'm not going to fire him over this. But he mainly just, they'll assign him something and then they have to almost message him, are you going to leave for this? Because he doesn't ever want to leave the truck. He'll sit there and do whatever and goof off in the truck. I'm like, man, if I'm in the truck, I want to work. And then when I'm not working, I want to leave. This dude is just happy being in the truck. He works like 30 hours a week. And my manager told me, he said last week, and he brings it up, he says he drove 735 miles all last week. This is a Southeast Regional guy. And I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? That's nothing. If I didn't have a governed truck, I could do that in a day if I had good assignments. That's just ludicrous to me. Anyway, so I did put in a resignation. I'm good to go with Martin. And this week that I'm working right now is my last week with JB Hunt. So when I finish this upcoming week and I do my next update, I'm officially done with JB Hunt. I'm probably going to end up finishing up on my Friday, which is going to be Thursday morning. I'll meet up with my manager, make sure they sign back out of the truck. I'll probably finish early in the day. Again, maybe 5, 6, 7 a.m., something like that. That way I'll have plenty of time to clean out the truck, which I'll probably start doing earlier this week or later this week. And then once I'm all square there, I'll sign back the truck and give him his keys and I'll be done. And I will be out of here on Thursday and starting Monday with Martin again. So that's that. Kind of chaotic week, being that almost every single load that I took out, it was in gating back to one of the yards. But you know what? Loads are soft and they kept me moving, which it took a little coercing sometimes and calling them nonstop and pestering them through the OBC, but they gave me loads. Part of it was me asking in advance and making sure that they gave me pre-assignments before their planners left because I knew they were going to leave. But that comes with experience, right? So anyway, today is my Monday. I'm shutting down officially right now. I will tell you how today went next week. Thanks for watching.